Hi, everyone. Welcome to Figuring Out Fabric, where I ask dumb questions and you get smart answers. And I'm really excited to have Sandeep Pawar on the show. Um, Sandeep Pawar is one of the few bloggers where every time he puts out content, I'm excited to see it. And when it comes to Fabric, if I'm having any sort of trouble with Fabric notebooks or I'm dealing with some niche edge case, there's a very good chance that he has some blog that's trying to help me out. Most recently, it was on pip install and just a nightmare of trying to deal with inline installations and all that kind of stuff. Sandeep is currently on the Microsoft Fabric Cat team, so they help customers with the most difficult problems. And then, but before that, was a Microsoft MVP and was working at I think Toshiba. Is that right?
Hitachi,
Hitachi. Ignore.
something like that.
Yeah,
Some Japanese company. Close
I'm
enough.
like something with hard drives. But I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Eugene. Really excited to be on the show. I have listened to some of the previous podcasts. So I'm really glad you asked me. I don't know why you asked me, but I'm really glad to be here. So excited to be part of this.
Very cool. Yeah, I was thinking we could talk about notebooks and some of that kind of stuff. But do you want to talk a little bit how you got involved with Fabric? Because I'm learning more and more. It's it's this weird choose your own adventure, and it seems like a lot of people come in from very different angles.
Yeah. Yeah. So my background is a mechanical engineer. I was a researcher. I was in computational dynamics, fluid dynamics, and a lot of statistical analysis, design of
Mm,
experiments, and that kind of stuff for almost 10 years. And I was doing my second master's in engineering management. I had no desire to be in data or anywhere near data. But I was exposed to data analytics and data science when I
yep.
was doing that master's. And that's where one fine day I learned about Power BI, got into Power BI, and then the rest is history. But since then, and this was back in 2015, I learned about the Power BI community. So I've been part of the Power BI community for a very long time, and it was, I don't have any DBA background, right? If you ask me
Right.
anything about SQL Server, you are a DBA. If you ask me anything about, I can write SQL, but if you ask me about how to stand up a SQL server and think, no clue, zero idea.
Yeah.
So Power BI was really a good gateway for me into a professional data analytics practice. I also had prior experience with using Python and Notebook and so forth. So even when I was doing Power BI development, I used notebooks and Python, and that was purely because, at least in my mind, mentally, when I'm working on a Power BI project, or when I used to work on Power BI project, not anymore, not as much as I used to.
Right.
Um, the the mind shift was, or zone was, think about data modeling, right? And then think about how can I get it into the perfect star schema or all the cardinality and that kind of stuff. Then think about DAX optimization, and then think about reports and so things like that. And as somebody who worked more on the data prior to Power BI, I felt that I needed another tool to just understand the data a bit more, understand the patterns in the data, understand
Hmm.
the things that are like, okay, what if I look at the data this way? Is there enough signal in it that I can show back to my uh, business stakeholders and things like that? And for me, Power Python was and Notebook was that tool. So I didn't have to think about any of the Power BI stuff in there. So what got me excited was, before Fabric, I wrote a whole lot of blogs on my previous blog, which was powerbi.com,
Mm.
on how to use Python and Notebook, and how can you use the analysis services endpoint in with Jupyter Notebook as an external tool and things like that. And I learned about Fabric when it was still Trident, very, very early days
Right.
of
Yeah.
Trident. And it was like a light bulb moment that, if I could have those tools on one single platform, or at that point, I didn't know anything. But I guess what I expressed back to Microsoft team was, if I had a notebook with Power BI, that will make me happy, because then I can understand the data, and then it will be a one seamless experience. They went above and beyond and then gave me the whole suite of tools, right? So I guess that's how the Power BI plus Fabric journey started. I was lucky enough to be at that point. I was working at Hitachi Solutions, not Toshiba, but Hitachi Solutions,
Tomato,
and
tomato.
yeah, so Hitachi Solutions, and we were one of the first 10 companies to be onboarded to the private preview of Fabric back then. They did a lot of testing, worked with the product team very, very closely on very early beta versions of Fabric. And I felt that this was going to be a huge moment for us as Power BI developers and for customers in general who are Power BI customers. And I had almost like 6 to 8 months of lead on them, in terms of what I had already learned, right? And then being part of the community, I've always said this before in other forums as well, that I like to learn and then share what I learn, and then we all learn and grow together as a community, because that has helped me significantly. So I started writing blogs on that. In fact, my first blog on Fabric was the day Fabric was launched.
Oh, okay.
And that's how Fabric.guru started. I didn't mean to, but I was there when the announcement was made. And I was like, okay, maybe I should. And I just bought
Oh,
I
geez.
bought a
Smart.
domain, and I was in my hotel room in Seattle, and I started writing, and that was it.
I think a lot of us have bought the domain and then it just languishes for
Yeah.
a while. Like there were multiple years that I owned adventurewhoops.com and I had plans for it and just never did anything with it. So I commend you for actually starting a blog on it.
But don't ask me the other domains I own.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I plenty of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess related to that, a question is, do you feel like there's a general entry point for people coming from the Power BI side? Because, um, for me on this project that I'm working on, I feel like there's a strong split between the Power BI folks that are, kind of comfortable in their sort of area, and I don't necessarily want to push like Python notebooks or anything. They've been taking to T-SQL notebooks. That's been great.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have the other people that have a little bit more of the inclination for data engineering, and they think, oh, well, it's just a programming language. Everyone should learn a programming language. And I feel like it's a big jump. So do you feel like there's any like easy sort of entry points for people who are maybe coming from the Power BI side?
Yeah, so I think the semantic link is definitely that entry point, in my
Mm,
opinion. Semantic link, when it was launched originally, wasn't intended to be like a full, Python and Power BI bridge, but it has become that. The original
yeah.
idea was, um, that what if you could use your semantic model for machine learning and data science, but then it has grown beyond that. Now it can do all of those things. Plus, it can do a lot of administration and tenant administration, capacity and workspace and all that, item management. And then plus on top of that, the Power BI side of things. I think Power Semantic Link and Notebook is one entry point for that, but it doesn't have to be that. Um, I think what is important is, like, if you are doing a Power BI development and if you're happy with where you are, and you're not running into any issues, there is no impetus for you to learn those things, right? It's only when you get to a point, like as at an enterprise scale, where you're like, okay, well, I wish I had another tool where you could do certain things. And that's where I think that is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because the last time I had to do anything serious in Python, I was writing video games for programming competitions in like high school and college. But I've had to learn, and it definitely is sort of that Swiss Army knife, I think. So areas that we've been using it is if I need to read from SFTP, well,
Yeah.
okay, yes, pipelines can do it, but they don't support SSH keys for authentication. So I have to pull in this different library, or we're trying to pull data from Workday, and so we're having to pull it in multiple batches, and then it's JSON, and we're trying to parse it, and all this kind of stuff. And so far, I think the like use it as kind of this thing of last resort has worked out well because we've found plenty of areas where it's like, man, the flexibility is really nice.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. Totally agree with you that I have been on many projects where I'm part of a team. So Hitachi Solutions, I was a consultant,
yeah,
and it was usually a couple of data engineers, data analytics engineers, Power BI developers, report developers, and so forth. And even if we were, let's say, using Databricks, Synapse, or whatever it could be, as a Power BI developer, I was like, yeah, you landed the data in gold, but I it doesn't make sense because the customer was asking for this, so there is some inconsistency. Did
yeah,
you in your SQL, did you add this where clause or did you not, or what, is the data really crappy, and things like that. With Fabric being one platform, that definitely helps because everybody is on one that platform. And then two, if you have that access to the node, access to that data using the notebook, and using the same tools, and if you're able to speak the same language as the data engineer is speaking, then that goes a long way. It can shorten your overall development time, and you're able to do some of that work on your own as well. So which helps significantly, in my opinion. And then plus, like, data engineers, they would probably, and I've been in those conversations many times, like data engineers where they create the goal, and I'm like, this is not how Power BI is going to work. You need to
yeah,
create a star schema and things like that, right? So uh, if, let's say, for if you're a smaller company and if you have a team of data engineers who are working on a project and they can land the data, but if you have enough knowledge to create that final gold version, gold layer, then that helps significantly in terms of shaping the your model and things like that. So to your point, yes, absolutely. It helps if you know those tools.
yeah. I think you hit on a point with like what the data engineers are comfortable with or what the data scientists are comfortable with, and I'll be curious your opinion since you sound like someone who's actually like you're kind of bilingual here. But one of the things that was when I was trying to learn this stuff that was the most difficult was deciphering how much is this is a thing that you really want to use this instead of pipelines or data flows for, and how much is this just a different culture or a different group of technicians got comfortable with. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So, like, one of the things that was really challenging starting out was I would try to watch a course on working with data frames, and it would be like, here's how you select columns and here's how you filter, and it's like, well, I can do that in SQL. What is the like secret sauce? What is the thing that this stuff is good at that I need it for, and like I'm starting to get a sense of that. I think
Yeah.
being able to work with these big sets of data all at once, I think some of the more advanced kind of parsing, being able to write your own functions is really, really cool. But
Yeah.
there is also a little bit of it feels like sometimes just like this is the stuff people know. Because I've also run into people where like someone wanted to be able to check for new files so that we can make a list for Power BI of what to filter on. And they
Mhm.
just did in Python because that's what they were comfortable with. Or someone else, I forget if the tool was Streamlight or something, but there was this like not machine learning.
Streamlit. Yeah, Streamlit. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They're
to
like,
create an
hey,
app.
yeah, they made an app, and it's like,
Yeah.
hey, how can we host it? And the person I'm working with was like, well, can we do this in Power BI? And there was like a little bit that we couldn't, and I told them about user data functions, and that may end up being a solution.
Yeah.
So I guess my rambling question is like, how much is stuff that like this is kind of a unique capability and you really should learn it, and how much is, well, it's just like these sorts of folks are comfortable with these tools and they just happen to default to it more, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
That the people who are comfortable with SQL and come from that background, they'll probably want to stick with that because that's what they're most comfortable with. That's what their experiences, and nothing wrong with that. But then, as you start branching out and then creating more solutions that are not typical, so Streamlit is one example that you just mentioned, right?
Right.
um, so as things like that, and that's where, and especially in this world of AI and LLMs and everything, those things have become much easier as well for you as a developer to at least experiment with and see if it helps. So I think a good example of that is, let's say, last week I wrote a blog on user defined functions, DAX user defined functions, and I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, currently UDFs, they cannot be centralized in a
Mm.
tenant. It is scoped to the model, and and then I was like, okay, wish there was a way to catalog all of that. And Streamlit would have been an excellent choice for that, but we have notebooks. So why not use Notebook plus Power BI so I can catalog all of my UDFs for that, query each of the semantic models. So I have use cases as well. And then you can embed that in an OR gap and show that back to your users, right? So that is one example. There are multiple such cases where if you know the tool, and I think the barrier to learn those tools has become, it's gotten really low now, right? It's a matter
Yeah.
of just asking question and then coming up with that. But you have the tool, and if you learn it, it takes you really opens up more portals to what are the different types of solutions that you can create. Now, if you're happy with typical like a medallion architecture using SQL and then creating your layers and stuff like that. No reason to branch out and learn something new, but it won't hurt. If you learn something new. And Python is, I think, one of those things where it opens up a lot of new capabilities. As somebody has no programming background, uh, I know enough Python to do data analysis. If you ask me to write Python to create some app or something, I would have zero clue, right? So it's
Right.
not like you need to learn a ton of things. Just a little bit of it, and it goes a long way.
Yeah, I think um, you're not going to regret learning Python because, some people say it looks like it's pseudocode the way that it's written. It's very plain English and it's
Yeah.
ubiquitous. Like something like R, maybe you will regret it because it's a
Yeah.
niche domain specific language. I'm gonna make all the statisticians and data scientists mad at me,
Yeah.
but like it's a narrow sort of thing. It's in Fabric, you can use it, but Python is sort of everywhere, and you can even learn it in sort of fun sort of ways. So I've been getting into like microcontrollers and electronics and that
Oh,
kind of
okay.
stuff, and so there's MicroPython.
Ah, okay.
But I think you kind of hit on a point implicitly that we touched on before as well, is if you are planning on doing any kind of like orchestration, monitoring, administration in Fabric, a lot of times you're going to have to build it yourself, at least part of
Yes,
it, and you're going to use Python notebooks or
100%.
PySpark notebooks. And so I agree 100%. Learn it now, even if you're just like dipping your toes in, because at first I found notebooks really disorienting. And part of that was all the muscle memory from DAX, because I
Yeah.
would hit shift enter. I was like, how do I do a new line in a notebook? And everything I tried would run the cell. And I was going crazy. but once you get a handle on it, I used to think notebooks were kind of weird. It's like, why do we need this extra layer? Because I was used to programming,
Yeah.
but there you get sort of this meta REPL. So for the folks who don't know, REPL is read, evaluate, print loop. It's the
Yeah.
idea in Python that you can just type stuff, do stuff, see the result. Notebooks are kind of this meta loop where you can work on a cell, you can rerun it, you can
More
change some stuff.
interactive. Yeah.
And so it's really, really nice for development because you don't have to figure it all from start to finish. You don't have to run it from all start to finish. You can just run in the middle. Your entire
Yeah.
notebook is your debug environment.
And you'll find people who don't like that. So those
Okay.
who like Python, like pure Python, and
Yeah.
bare hands, they they write Python, any Python they want. They stick with CLI, they stick with the
Sure.
typical code editors and things like that, and they don't like using notebooks even in production. And their goal, or they always preach about like creating the .pys and the wheel files and then use them
Hmm.
and things like that. So you'll find people across the spectrum. And honestly, there is no good way, there is no right way. All depends on who you talk to and their experience. Um, and which is, again, why I like Fabric, because you have all those options available, right? You don't like it, don't bother with it. But if you're curious about it, you have the tool available to do that.
Yeah, and it's pretty low risk too to start playing around with it,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah.
You're not going to burn down your capacity with some Python notebooks,
Yeah.
and you can just set up a workspace or just play around or just do some stuff with some CSV files, and that's fine. So, a question, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but it's been over a decade since I had to learn Python, so I don't even know where anyone would begin these days. But do you have any thoughts on, like, any resources or anything you can think of for like how people should go about learning if they do want to try to learn Python?
Yeah, so I would say, because we are talking here, I guess your audience is data analysts and data
Yeah,
engineers. I would recommend starting with Python. Now, if my colleague Mim is listening to this podcast, he will wholeheartedly disagree with me. They start with
sure.
the DuckDB or Polars or Spark or something. But I think it gives you, the API is similar enough that you can port it over to any other
Hmm.
library that you can access. All of those things are again available in Fabric Notebook, so you don't have to pick and choose. Yeah, as far as learning it, so there are a couple of resources. So there is one a YouTube channel. I think his name, and I could be mispronouncing it. His name is Boris Parkev or something.
Hmm.
I learned from his course, which was 10 years ago. And his style was very repetitive. Like, he would show something and then he
Hmm.
would repeat it like three, four times in different ways. And that really stuck with me because when I was doing, or when I was learning, I knew how to do it and things like that. He has open sourced it since then. Um,
Oh,
there
okay.
is another guy. His name escapes me, but his website is Dunder Data. Like, Dunder is like underscore underscore in Python. So Dunder Data.
Oh, okay.
He has also released all of his Python and Pandas videos on YouTube. Happy to share the link later. But those two resources were super helpful to me, at least getting started, where I felt that, okay, this is something that I can use and I can learn, and this is good. And once you learn that, like once you understand the basics of it, like what is a file, what is a for loop, while loop,
Yeah.
how do you create like a list, and what is a set, and what is a dictionary, and those sorts of things. The rest of the things is just matter of working on a real project, and then that's about it. Understanding the structure is all you need.
Yeah, I would agree with that, that a lot of it at that point is just idiomatic to what library you're
Yeah.
using or what you're trying to do. And for the sake of transparency, my dirty secret is I've been writing a lot of PySpark thanks to ChatGPT 5 thinking mode, because I know those basics, but
Yeah.
there's so many different like functions and parameters and settings that I don't know about, especially when you're dealing with Spark or something else like this. And so it's still important to make sure that you understand what's going on, try to
100, especially
avoid
with Spark.
copy
Yeah.
paste. I mean, I can be guilty of that too sometimes, but if you don't recognize something, go to the definition page for that function and read up on it. But I agree, like the core is pretty concise. I think that's
Yeah, so I
definitely
think
correct.
on Spark itself, Spark is another beast on its
Yeah.
own, right? So there are two parts of Spark. One is writing Spark or PySpark,
Yeah.
and other is understanding the internals of Spark. So if
Yeah.
somebody is considering writing PySpark, I would, to your point, right? I would 100% agree that you also need to understand the internals of Spark. You don't need to have a PhD on it, but you need to at least understand what is a stage, what is a job, what is a task, and then how multiprocessing actually happens, and what are some of the basic configurations and things like that. Otherwise, you'll probably use it, then see performance is bad, and go back to the old ways of using SQL or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So,
Yeah, and I'm still definitely getting a handle on it. I think for anyone listening, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I think that's totally natural because to me, a lot of this big data stuff, it feels like jumping into a soap opera season 12. We've gone through like the Hadoop arc and, the Kubernetes arc, and now we're in the Spark arc, and Databricks has come in, but he's got an evil twin brother who's Snowflake, and it's a lot to keep up with. A book I would recommend, and we'll put all this stuff in the show notes, but Delta Lake Up and Running, I think it was. I
okay.
think you can get it for free from Databricks if you find the right link and you let them spam you with this stuff. But
Yeah.
that was really helpful because it explained just enough about the underlying storage to make a lot of it click. But yeah, I'm still I
I'll
can't say
also
I quite yet
add.
understand a task and a job when it comes to Spark.
So I'll also add that I think one of the things that the Spark team on at Fabric is focusing on, they identify this as a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because uh, and so if you notice, like the features that are being released
Mm.
are so that out of the box, you don't need to worry about a lot of those things. You don't need to optimize or
Yes.
need to know what are those optimizations and what are those configurations. So the experience that the Fabric team is working on is so that you, as an average user, it will do 80% of the way there, and it's only for when you're talking about terabytes of data where you
Yeah.
really need to tune the jobs. That's where you need to, understand that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's great that they're doing that. And even just the fact that starter pools exist. Because I had my first run in with an exception to that because I was trying to do pip install and trying to mess around with Python environments. And I kind of learned the hard way that, okay, well, when you're doing a custom environment, instead of the notebook starts running in 8 or 10 seconds, now it's 2 minutes because you have a
Yeah.
custom version or whatever. So I do appreciate that there's a lot of stuff you don't even think about that they do to make it just work. They make it approachable and all that.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and start to wrap up. We got a couple questions for you. Any last thoughts before we wrap up? Anything else you want to add?
No, not really. I think if there is anybody who's listening and if they are Power BI developers, again, to just bring them back to the conversation here, really
Yeah.
encourage them to look at Python notebook. And when I say notebook, just Python and PySpark, both the flavors. We have T-SQL as well, but all of those. Because once you learn them, you'll see a different world of opportunities that, and again, all of this matters because then you can create solutions that you can take back to your business stakeholders and then show them, right? Um,
Yeah.
so
And
yeah,
and we didn't touch on it, and we don't really have too much time, but just there's those collaboration features. Part of why T-SQL notebooks are doing so well with the company I'm working with is people can see what has been run, they can see the code that's
correct.
been written, and so that does help you kind of show the value. So the first question is, what is your maybe maybe we already talked about it, but what's your favorite Fabric feature?
A notebook for
Yeah,
sure.
right. I know it's like maybe that's a softball. That's fine. So,
So, yeah, I mean, so if I had to like, and I mentioned this right when I first envisioned Fabric, it was Power BI plus Notebook. So I'd be
yeah,
like happy if there was everything else was
yeah.
removed and there was just one. But if let's say if Notebook, I can't mention Notebook,
Yeah,
then
right.
the second would be second would be One Lake. In my
Yeah,
role, I get to work with the customers, some of the biggest customers on the planet, and everybody, when I show them like power of One Lake, they understand like what One Lake really brings, because we are at a phase of this in the industry where it was first was really past SaaS, and now we are moving towards LLMs and AI and open format and everything. And now the bet that Fabric team made on open standards and open format and being able to
right.
collaborate with other vendors and other developers using One Lake is really paying dividends. So One Lake would be, I guess, my pick.
That makes sense. And then I don't know if you can answer 'cause you're on the cat team, but what's your least favorite Fabric feature? What's something that maybe needs a little bit of refinement? It's still basic.
um, so I would say the Power BI visuals.
I think that's fair. I think that's I
Yeah,
think that's
no,
reasonable.
honestly, and yeah, so there has been a lot of investment in a lot of areas of Fabric and Power BI. Before it was just Fabric, I guess the job was much easier for the
Yeah.
team. But now with Fabric, with the resources being allocated to many different projects, the Fabric team has to balance and make sure
Yeah.
that there is enough everywhere. So hopefully, there'll be, I know there are a lot of investments being made, and we'll see those results. But yeah, visuals.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the roadmap, and sometimes, they're making progress, but sometimes it's slower than I might like. I don't know if you saw, but Alex Powers hosted an Ask Me Anything on Reddit with the visuals team. So they're
Yes.
they're definitely engaged, but yeah, there's a lot more spinning plates or juggling balls or whatever than there used to be. So
Yeah, and there are, so look at something like DAX UDFs, massive
yeah,
feature, right?
yeah,
That requires resources. Look at something like Direct Lake resources. Look at something like visual calculations. Those are like massive upgrades to the
yeah,
engine and the overall features. And now you have to pick and choose, right? Whether do you put your resources on this or that, and so not a hard glad that I'm not in that position, right?
yeah. No, I'm glad I'm not a product manager because you just kind of have to pick your favorites, and it's hard. I mean, shout out to Jay. I love him to
Yeah,
death because he just
totally.
keeps trucking along despite any haters or anything. So you talk about, I mean, some of those were ones that he shepherded to make sure happened. So, yeah. Um, so the last question is, I know you're not on social media a ton, but anywhere people can find you, anything you want to pitch or promote or anything like that. We mentioned your blog,
Yep.
fabric.guru. Is that
Yep.
how is
Correct.
guru a top level domain? That's kind of wild to me.
It is not. No, so I was looking at all the domains, and I was looking at fabric dot something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I was like, okay, fabric dot guru. I'm not a guru, but feels very aspirational. I want to be a
Yeah,
guru. So
sure.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so fabric.guru would be one. And then, of course, LinkedIn. I don't use X much these days, but a little bit on X at Pawar BI.
Yep.
Easy to remember. But yeah.
Perfect. Well, this has been a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on the show, Sandeep.
Yeah. Thank you, Gene. Really appreciate it.